So if you're like an environmentalist or like a vegan or anything of that ilk, one of the core tenets is that you believe that humans should take action to reduce their damage to the planet, reduce their impact to the planet. And I think if you're kind of like in that realm, you kind of already know that the average human is just as they live, they're just increasing their carbon footprint rather than reducing their carbon footprint. And obviously, if you're increasing your carbon obviously, if you're increasing your carbon footprint, then you are doing the planet no good. And you would think that if somebody is an environmentalist or a vegan or anybody who kind of like falls into that ilk of people, like that they, as like servants to the planet, knowing that they're likely going to be increasing their carbon footprint, the answer would be for them to themselves cease existing, because them not being here is better for the planet than them being here. And I don't, and I want to go ahead and say this, like, I don't care if you're vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, carnivore, damn near, like whatever, as long as you're not harming others. I really don't mind what you do. This is a purely philosophical question, and I want to get to the bottom of it. And I'm going to be enlisting ChatGPT to kind of help me. So let me jump into this. Purely philosophically speaking, how you spell that? I spell that wrong? Oh no, okay. Speaking purely because I don't want ChatGPT thinking that I'm like on some like, I don't want that. Okay, purely philosophically speaking, if you're a vegan or if you're a vegan or an environmentalist and you believe that and you know that the less people on the planet, the better off the planet will be, would you suggest people cease to exist in order to save the planet? See what we're talking about. Purely philosophically speaking, this question touches on a deep tension between anthropocentric ethics and esocentric ethics. Here's how it can be unpacked. From a deep environmentalist view, some radical strains of environmental philosophy, like deep ecology and antinatalism, have proposed that humans depopulate or voluntary extinction would be beneficial for the planet's long-term ecological health. Philosophers like Arrhenius or the voluntary suggest that drastically reducing or ending human population could protect ecosystems, reduce suffering for humans and animals, and allow Earth to regenerate. However, even these emphasize voluntary action, not coercion or harm, and often frame this as a long-term ideal rather than practical. From a vegan ethical framework, veganism at its core is grounded in nonviolence, minimizing harm and respecting sentient life. Most ethical vegans extend that principle not just to animals but to people too. Okay, so maybe I had it wrong. Maybe veganism at its core is more grounded in nonviolence and minimizing harm in general rather than just to save the planet. Even if one acknowledges that fewer people might lessen ecological destruction, the means by which that is achieved matter. Ethics aren't suspended just because the end goal seems noble. So even a strictly logical vegan likely wouldn't advocate for the end of human existence. They'd advocate for sustainable, compassionate living. The utilitarian consequentialist angle. If someone prioritizes total utility, pleasure over suffering, and believes human existence leads to immense suffering for people, they might argue for population reduction as a net positive. But again, ethical versions of this tend to emphasize nonviolent, consensual, and gradual means, such as encouraging smaller families. Even under the most radical philosophical lenses, suggest that people cease to exist is rarely framed as an ethical imperative. Most frameworks focus on changing how we live. Interesting, interesting, interesting. But it would be, but ethics, the most noble thing of someone who cares about the environment could do would be in their lives. No? Hmm. That's a stark and emotionally intense framing, but it's worth untangling. If we ignore ethics and assess only a strict utilitarian or ecological resource consumption lens, then yes, an individual ceasing to exist would reduce their personal carbon footprint to zero, no more emissions, waste, or consumption. And that looks like a net environmental win. But here's a deeper problem. One individual's ends their impact, but it also ends their potential to reduce impact at scale through influencing others, innovating sustainable practices, organizing system and change. Okay, so basically, what this is saying, and it's funny what it says below this. What it's saying basically right here is that um, if you're one of these people, if you're like vegan, environmentalist, whatever, and you cease to exist, you can't influence others to follow your practice, right? So they're saying that. So they're saying like if you continue to exist, you could amass so much influence that influences so many people that you could begin to live a life of reducing your carbon footprint by your sheer messaging. That's an interesting take. So let's hold on to that one. Martyrdom doesn't scale. If the noble thing were self-elimination and it caught on, it would quickly raise profound ethical and social psychological implications. Who is left to steward the planet? Well, I think this is a pretty dumb argument, mostly because who would left to steward the planet? The planet. That's who's left to steward it. Why do we need somebody to steward it? I mean, there's plenty of life left on the planet. We're not nuking the world. We're just taking ourselves out of the game. Um, so, um, uh, because it's not really about leaving people to steward the planet. More so, it's about doing what's right for the environment. Does it create a culture of despair rather than one of responsibility and action? See, it's kind of getting away from the point at this point, because the point should actually be: is it good for the environment? Yes or no. Is the most noble thing for a vegan or an environmentalist thing to do would be to take themselves out of the game? And the answer appears to be yes, unless you can amass so much influence. So basically, I guess my thing would be like, if you're truly, truly, truly about saving the environment, I think you're either taking yourself out of the game, you're either taking yourself out of the game, or you're going on a campaign. You're going Greta mode. Thunberg? You're going Greta mode, whatever her name is, respectfully. I see what she's doing overseas. Respect, Greta. Um, ooh. In short, if you remove ethics, relationships, influence, and systemic change from the picture, yes, removes your footprint. But with those reintroduced, the most noble act isn't but transforming how you live so that your existence becomes a net positive. See, what a nice ending to that. So I think we basically realized, like, yes, the best thing that somebody who is vouching for the planet can do is to take themselves out of the game, but you can also do good while you're here. And honestly, do what you want. I don't care. As a Visa out.